Color management is a big topic, but let's split off color management in Lightroom as a separate topic.
Okay.
One of the things you want to do is go up to Preferences and the External Editing tab, because you frequently want to export your file to Photoshop or possibly some other application. And here is where you make some choices. Now, file format, you can either go as TIFF or PSD, your choice.
I tend to do TIFF, yeah, because it's an open format, not unlike DNG.
Yeah.
PSD is proprietary, and there's no guarantee that, I mean, the odds are really good, but there's no
You mean
guarantee.
100 years from now? Yeah, right, okay.
Well, the sustainability of digital objects, a lot of that is based upon whether it's proprietary or
Open standards.
Open standards.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in open standards. Okay, this is the important one for what we're talking about here, and that's color space. sRGB, Adobe RGB, ProPhoto RGB. sRGB is for the web. We'll come back to that. Adobe RGB is a larger color space, but for, I would say, go to ProPhoto RGB, which is the largest standard color space. Now, the color space that Lightroom works in is huge. It's not named. It's
well, actually, it is. It's kind of like Thomas RGB.
It's Thomas RGB. Okay.
And what it is it's the chromaticities, color coordinates of ProPhoto RGB, which was originally designed by Kodak for digital imaging. So it's the chromaticities of ProPhoto RGB, but instead of ProPhoto's 1.8 gamma, it's a 1.0 gamma, because Thomas has determined that a lot of the processing is better done not in a gamma encoded space, but in linear. However,
but it is interpreted for the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
In a gamma encoded.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, is that there is yet another color space called Melissa RGB, but it only is in the develop module for the histogram display and the color readouts.
This is probably more information than most people
but I
need.
mean, this is color management in Lightroom. It's pretty lightweight and easy to understand, but there are a lot of questions on the LuLa forum about, what color space.
Yeah.
So my thing is, and I've got a demo to show it, I use ProPhoto RGB as a working space, and I would only use sRGB or Adobe RGB as an export destination space.
Yeah. So here we're going to Photoshop. ProPhoto is the export color space to be in. You want to be in 16-bit. You want to retain as much information as you can. Resolution is simply a convenience number. It's not changing anything. A lot of people think
not resampling.
You're not resampling. All it means is once you're in Photoshop, that's what the dimensions will display as on your ruler and so forth. But the image is still not in any numerical size. It's just pixels.
Yeah, it's X number of pixels high by X number of pixels wide.
Right. And then, do you want to have it compressed or not? I would suggest none. No point in going zipping the file, because you're simply going to unzip it later.
Well, I would argue if you're working remotely with somebody else, the zip compression of a TIFF is about the best you can get. So
right, but I'm not.
It does.
I'm not being remote. I'm doing it right here.
Yeah, it does take longer to encode and decode, so it's quicker not to compress.
Okay, so that's one aspect of color management, is what happens when you export to Photoshop or some other application. Then the other aspect of color management is in the print module, and that's down here under color management. And what we have is managed by printer. No.
Yes. No, let me just say, there are some printers that don't understand color management.
Why would you own one of those?
Well, my little picture made.
That's true.
So if you've got a situation in which you've got a printer where you cannot turn color management off, then you have to use manage by printer. That's the only time. And, you know, for us, that would be an edge case. But there are people that find manage by printer. I don't recommend using manage by printer and then twiddling the printer controls. I don't suggest that at all.
Right.
But if you have a printer that you cannot turn the color management off on, then you don't have a choice. But since you have a printer that you can, you know, exercise your choice.
Edge case, I like that. So instead of manage by printer, what we want to do is we want to use a profile. Now, we made a profile for the R3000 printer on Canson, and I have some other profiles here for other printers, but let's show how you get there. I'm going to click on Other, and up comes this list of every profile that's on the computer.
Which is dizzying.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You probably have profiles that you don't have the printer for anymore. At least I do.
Yeah. No, actually, this is reasonably clean. I just have a lot of printers here.
Yeah.
So if you put a check mark next to any of these, then what happens is when you go to this dialog box, they come up.
Yeah.
So that's the profile I want. And now I'm able to print, but with one exception, rendering intent.
Yeah, and here's...
Do we want to get into a rendering intent discussion?
Well, we will when we're doing soft proof, because here's the thing. The only way to know which rendering intent will be best for your image is either make a print both ways or soft proof. And
Lightroom does not have soft proofing.
Much to my chagrin, irritation and frustration, Lightroom 3 did not have soft proofing, even though I was assured that it would. It didn't. You know, it's called feature triage. Oh my God, we have to ship. What can we drop? And that's one of the things that got dropped. But in the vast majority of the time, and this is a typical image, if tone and the relationship of tone is more important than color, then relative colorimetric. If the color and the relationship of other colors to near outer gamut, perceptual will remap all the outer gamut colors into gamut, but it will adjust the tone. So basically, what's more important, the tone or the color? If the tone is more important, I suggest relative, and if the color relationships are more important, perceptual. And the odds are, if we were to look at that image, that's probably not out of gamut from this printer.
No, it's not.
So you want to stay in relative, which is what you used for the print.
Yep.
So that's the only thing.
Well, because I'm lazy, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I'm also lazy, which seems like a contradiction, but hey, that's my reality. The reality is, unless it jumps out at me that I really should soft proof, relative is my default. More images print properly with relative than perceptual. So I don't know what the percentage is, 70% of the time. So relative is my default. But we will talk separately about exporting to Photoshop, doing a soft proof, and then coming back. But that's a separate discussion. Okay. So those are the basics of color management for printing. Now,
the only thing that I'd point out too, and there are some people that don't do their own printing, if you click on the under the print job instead of printer JPEG file. So if you wanted to send this out to a photo lab and you wanted to have the margins set the way you wanted to, you could export the image, but you wouldn't have what you've designed in the print module if you just do a simple export.
right.
So here you could actually do the print sharpening, and if you scroll down, do the output sharpening.
Output sharpening, okay.
Yeah. So there under profile, you would have the ability to do sRGB or Adobe RGB. I wouldn't recommend sending ProPhoto RGB.
But Adobe RGB would probably be a better idea than sRGB if it's going to be printed.
I mean, an awful lot of ProPhoto labs
They print sRGB?
require sRGB.
Really?
You can go to Costco in the United States, go to the Costco website and download custom profiles for different Costco photo labs around the country. So even Costco will do color managed workflow, but a lot of the pro photo labs, I don't know whether it's a lack of understanding of color management or what, but they say, you know, just send us sRGB.
Yeah, but that's a reduced gamut color space. So you're not going to get a print that's as punchy and colorful
but
as
the
that.
Noritsu and Fujix printers actually are capable of slightly bigger than sRGB and could print Adobe RGB, but it requires that the printer operators understand the color management. So I think photo labs tend to do a lowering of the expectations because if you export it as sRGB, it'll look like what you saw on the screen because your screen is sRGB. Unless you've got a wide gamut display.
Right.
So if you were to do that, if you can get the custom profile, then you would load the profile in the proper location depending upon your platform, and then you would actually save the file processed into the custom
print
profile.
to file.
Yeah, print to file.
So, but if you had a really good lab, then you would get their profile, load it in, save it, and now send it to them and tell them that it's based on their profile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that now is printing to media. Let's talk about screen. And this is a good time to now talk about not just the color management settings for screen output, but also my workflow for sending, because obviously I've, over the years, put many, many images up on my website. So a lot of people say, well, they look pretty good. How did you get them to look that way? So let's now look at going to screen display.